Hello again. Thanks for stopping by today. We are working on the bump out again, and specifically trying to get the rafters put in place, get the bird block put in place, get a piece, a board set up in between the rafters on the top side so that we can attach the metal roofing and then get the metal roofing in place so that we don't have to worry about rain on that particular bump out anymore. So what I've got, you can see the rafters cut with the roof pitch, or I actually don't recall what that's called, the angled cut on the top, so that it can butt up against the header. And then I've got the bird's mouth notched out as well. And I'm pretty simply going to just put them up and screw them into place. And then we'll put the bird's block up on the outer side, and just work our way till we get the roof up in place. I'm trying to work out what the actual angle is. This would admittedly have been a little bit easier if I'd have planned a little bit better, so that I could actually build the closet to a decent height and then put the header in a specific place and cut the rafters to a specific angle. However, as I've mentioned before, some of this is flying by the seat of my pants. So it is what it is, and takes a little bit of extra figuring out. And it worked out quite well, so no real issues there, but it is definitely something that took a little more effort than it should have. I ended up putting a couple of runners along the side, basically girts that ran along the top of the rafter so that the siding will have somewhere to attach to. And then these little scrap pieces I just brought over are just pieces that were left over from other stuff, and I'm just trying to make sure I get everything cut and measured correctly, because as much as I'm not always the greatest at it, I do try to do the whole thing, measure twice, cut once, measure thrice, cut once, because you can always take stuff off, but you can never add it back. Which technically you sort of can, I guess, if you put a bunch of bracing and whatever, but I digress. So I use the circular saw to cut them down to a manageable size, and then I'm using the table saw to actually rip them into the height and angle that they need to be. While, Emily has some fun playing with Charlie. It would be genuinely interesting to actually know what goes through a dog's brain. I mean, people joke about it. Squirrel! But what really does go through their brain? One of the upcoming videos, I started working on milling again, and had inadvertently dumped a bunch of water all over me. And Charlie's not usually cuddly with me. I mean, he's not unfriendly with me by any means. I'm definitely the alpha, and he knows he gets in trouble with me a lot. And he's not a very cuddly dog just in general. He's more of a play dog than a cuddle dog, which is all fine and dandy, but he could tell something was wrong. And so he kept coming over trying to make sure I was okay, which was kind of fun. I showed Emily the raw footage because I thought she would get a kick out of it, and it was just fun to hear her do a mock dog voice. Oh, are you okay, Dad? Something's wrong. I feel like something's wrong. I need to make sure you're okay. Anyway, again, I digress. So, trying to just make sure everything's the same going up and down, that it's all nice and even and square. And then cutting some pieces for the top, which are actually basically the exact same thing as the bird's mouth. They just wouldn't be called a bird's mouth bird block, because they're not actually blocking birds from coming in. Now, some people, you may notice that there is not a vent cut into those bird block pieces, and the reason being is that we are actually going to be insulating this with closed cell spray foam, so there is no vent needed because there's no airspace between the metal and the insulation like we would need if we had fiberglass insulation, because the closed cell foam actually works as a sealing vapor barrier. I don't know in the long run if that's really the best way, but that's how pole barns are generally built, and that's what code is, and so that's what we'll do. It definitely makes things easier, and that's actually one of the advantages I was talking with Emily just the other day about, is that as far as insulative capabilities, building pole barns and structures like this is so much superior to traditional or modern stick built, where you've got a board every 16 or 24 inches, because every time you've got a board, you've got a thermal break to allow heat to transfer in between the insulation pieces through directly, well, not necessarily directly. I mean, it's still lumber and does have its own insulative values, but it's not as insulative as the foam is. So, instead of having these sections running all the way up and down, as well as all of your fire block, everywhere that you've got that, you've got that thermal break. So the more often you have those, the less solid your insulation is. But with the pole barn structure, the posts are actually the only real thermal break that there is, because you've got insulation on the inside of the girts or on the underside of the purlins, and then whenever you have any kind of other support structure, like in this case I've got the two center posts that are running down there where to attach the back of the cabinet, those will actually be covered with insulation on the opposite side, so the only thermal breaks in that entire wall section are going to be the window itself when that's put in, obviously, and then wherever the girts actually attach to the posts, because everywhere else will have either insulation between the siding and that post, or between the inside of the wall and the inside of the girt. So it actually is a phenomenal way to do that. Makes it so that it's nice and secure. We're working on putting the fascia on, and there was a little bit of a warp to one of the rafters apparently, and so we're just trying to get that tightened into position using a ratchet strap and a hammer, and then I ended up throwing an extra screw or two in it just to be on the safe side. But with that in place, we're now pretty close to being ready to put the actual metal up, so making good progress. The challenge, as usual when I've been doing the roofing stuff, is that once I get all of the rafters and things in place, I don't like leaving it out to sit in the rain, and so we're trying to race to get that done. Decided it was time to build a fire. And now I'm going to come over here and cut me some of the sheet metal to get roofing. These were 20 feet long originally, and we only needed 8 feet sections for the main roof. So they were all cut down to 12 feet, and the other 8 feet were put on the roof, and now I'm going to cut, I believe, 4 feet. A little over 4 feet, actually. I think 54 inches is where I ended up cutting them. And it took 3 sections per little roof, so they're those bump outs from the outside of the girt piece on the one side to the outside of the girt piece on the far side is just under 9 feet, which worked out pretty perfectly, actually, pretty ideally. It's not very often that I like the powerful battery-powered tools like the grinder and the circular saw. They just drain batteries too much for my preference, but they do sure come in handy in those instances where you need them. But every time I use one and then switch and use a corded tool, I'm always amazed at how much more powerful the corded tools really are. So I actually try to use the circular saw as little as possible on battery power. So anyway, now we're gonna try and put these in place, which was definitely a challenge. They are very awkward. And as you can see, we're slowly running out of time. The first challenge that I faced with the roofing was that I knew I needed a wow, I'm struggling with terms today. The piece of angled metal that deflects the water as it comes down. It's called a drip guard when it's over the edge. Anyway, I've got to have, since I have to build this essentially from the top down instead of from the bottom up like you would normally build a roof, I've got to try and get that into a position where it'll be above where the sheet metal needs to go, so I can slide the sheet metal underneath the metal underneath that, so that any moisture water that does get up there on the siding will fall down the siding, fall across the top of that, and then onto the top of the roofing metal, and won't have the option to actually fall into the, behind the top of the roofing metal. So what I'm working on at the moment now is going to be to cut all of the siding pieces. And then we'll actually get the siding up and show you what the finished product will look like. I needed a board up there at the top, and then the battery died, so our sunlight faded out while we were swapping out the battery, and once the sun goes down, it goes down pretty quick, pretty hard here. So I do have the siding pieces cut now, so I'm able to start putting those up, and trying to work in between the rafters to do this is definitely not the most ergonomic position to be working in. You got to do what you got to do. So, like I said, if we build another trailer similar to this one, there will definitely be some things that are changed on it. We do plan on building 2 more trailers at least. One is going to be our refrigerated processing room for processing, meats, so that we can have a mobile commercial kitchen, basically. And then the other one will actually be a mobile kitchen. It'll be a full kitchen and a full bathroom, so that as we're working on value-added farm products, we can have a complete commercial kitchen where for instance, the pets aren't allowed in there, and it'll be all tile and stainless steel and epoxy and whatever, so that it meets all of the requirements for the Department of Agriculture to qualify for whatever we need to qualify for, as far as being able to be certified for selling food products. Those will be built on a 12-foot wide frame on the trailer, so it'll be solid all the way down, and 2x6 walls. Although technically they'll be 2x8, because you'll all have a 2x6 post on those ones, and then the girts and purlins on the outside, because it'll still be built pole barn style like this one was. And again, part of that decision is to provide as much insulation as possible. I may even do 6x8 posts on the, what we call it, the red room, or the red trailer. That's where we will actually do the slaughtering and processing. And that one, if I do a thicker wall, it is strictly to get the added insulative value, because we know we want to be able to use as little energy as possible to maintain temperatures in there. And the idea behind having it insulated and refrigerated is that as we are slaughtering and processing the animals, we don't have to worry about time. That's one of the things that I learned working at a meat processing plant in northern Utah was if you have the entire room set to 38 degrees or 36 degrees, then it really doesn't matter if you have a machine break down and you have to wait to fix it because you're in a refrigerator, so it makes no difference if it takes you an hour or 3 hours, as long as it's covered and protected and whatnot. But that's the goal there. So as we do the actual slaughtering, we can bring them in and hang them. The entire floor will be epoxy so that it's super easy to clean. The walls will be same thing. I'll probably build wall panels, like a 4 foot by 8 foot wall panel, out of some cottonwood because I like the color. And then we'll let it dry completely, and then actually cover it with a layer like a flood coat of epoxy. And then when we put that up, all we have to do is seal the seams, and we have a custom looking fully food safe wall panel. And you can see here I'm struggling to get the lip of the roofing metal above the block that it needs to screw into and underneath the metal angle. And it really fought quite a bit. It didn't want to go into place, but we did eventually get it. You can see Emily went and got some gloves so she could actually put some pressure on that to push it up, while I was pushing up on from underneath to make sure it got over the wood. And we did get it in place and able to start securing that, and then I have to climb over and try and do the same thing on the second and third ones. And the third one is the most difficult because I have to screw that completely from outside, whereas at least these first two I could get most of the screws just by climbing up into the rafters like I am. I did figure out a better way to do that on the other side. We definitely had a much easier time when I put the wow, it's like that word really just doesn't exist in my head right now. The drip water control flashing. There we go. Wow. When I put the flashing in place on the other side, I actually put a 1-inch board across the top of it so that the flashing was actually sitting in the right position. That was the problem I ran into here, is I tried to guess where it should go and obviously guessed wrong. But anyway, yeah. So there's a little bit about the plans for the red room. And here, this is the last step, is to just get these last couple of screws in. And that was sure a nice feeling to have that done. And again, along with like when I was doing the upper roof, the main roof, it started to rain just as we were finishing up. So we'll get all the tools put away here, and then I'll use the camera to kind of get a little bit of a closer view up there. So here's basically the finished product. There will obviously be some more siding that goes down the sides, but those will connect and be continuous up and down. We've got the board and batten on the top, and got the roofing all in place with the flashing in the correct spot. So that's it for this video. Thank you for watching, and God bless you and yours. Stay safe out there.